emergency edition of the Garden Report.
Wee,
Um,
wee, wee.
I know, emergency.
The ambulance coming for
That's
Kemba.
yeah, exactly. Send the ambulance. Someone come get Kemba, and make this all go away.
And pick me up while you're at it.
Pick me up, right? Let's get into it real quick. We're just here. This was kind of impromptu, but just to catch everybody up with where we're at. And again, this is Jimmy Toscano, Bobby Manning, and so our developing situation involves one Kemba Walker, who earlier today, Brad Stevens was on a podcast on CLNS Media Network with Jeff Goodman and Bob Ryan, the Ryan and Goodman podcast, and he was their guest. And just kind of Jeff was just asking, hey, Kemba didn't look great at the end of last year. What's his status? And again, Bobby, you wrote about this today on CLNS Media and on Boston Sports Journal. Danny Ainge alluded to it. It wasn't a shock. However, I'm going to play it for you guys. Listen to Stevens talk and then just make your own interpretation on what you think here. This sounded like he was, and I'll give you my take afterwards.
Don't make us listen to it again.
I'm going to play the soundbite. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, he's working exceptionally hard on just continuing. The key to this whole thing with him is just strengthen the knee. And so just continuing to take this opportunity when we're not playing, when we're not practicing, to really focus on that. Very similar to what we did at the beginning of the bubble. I think that there will be a transition like that because of the shortened season, the shortened off season. I don't expect, it'll be some time before he's going full speed for us, for sure.
Meaning that he might miss the beginning of the season, Brad?
We'll see how that all goes. We haven't settled on any timelines. This is more of a plan appropriately thing so that he can play uninhibited as he moves forward. A lot like the bubble. Again, the bubble.
Okay. We've upset Jimmy Toscano.
You scared, Jimmy? Want me to
It
give you some
doesn't
optimism?
sound any better the 10th time you hear it.
Yeah, this is a disaster because of the fact that you have him for 3 more years. And that's what Ainge said back at his presser. We're trying to get him right for 3 years. If you can't get him right for the first full year, it's probably not looking good for the full 4 years. And you're talking about a player option at the end, too.
Yeah.
I will say for this season, though, I have a tiny bit of optimism out of this because...
Of course you do.
Because they manage it well. In the bubble, he came back roaring through that 8-game stretch. They had to sit him a few times. And they made it work. Now, the postseason, as it got along, as you were doing the every other night thing, it was tough. So what do you look at here? Last year, you had a team with 4 guys at the top who bore all the scoring load. I think it was 76% of the points came from the top 4. Now, all of a sudden, you're taking 2 of those guys in Hayward and Kemba out on many nights. How do you pick that up? Is Jeff Teague enough coming off the bench? I don't think so. You don't have the wing scoring behind the starters there. Not to mention, you're putting more of a ball handling pressure on Jason.
More Marcus Smart shots. That's what you get.
More Marcus Smart shots, more Jason Tatum ball handling, more Jaylen Brown ball handling. So you're putting 3 guys in a tough position there.
Jimmy?
Yeah, so it's hard to spin this any positive way, obviously. My hope is that there's going to be a lot of NBA teams that are going to be coming out very slow out of the gates, especially some of the teams that did go relatively deep into the bubble. So I'm not sure if the Celtics are going to be the only one that are, bringing some of their guys in slowly or resting guys on off nights. I don't think the NBA has any grounds to come at teams for giving guys, nights off. I don't think that they'll even consider that this season based on the quick turnaround here. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to hear Brad talk about Kemba Walker like he's going to be in a Walker half the season. I mean, you really don't want to hear that type of talk a month before things really ramp up here. So wasn't pumped to hear that. And then you hear the reports that, whether you believe them or not, that Danny Ainge tried to trade Kemba Walker, called a bunch of teams about Kemba Walker and clearly didn't get anywhere there.
That was the first red flag. And the guy look, I don't want to play the.
Yes, you do. Just do
look,
it.
I'm not looking for the win, but as soon as that stuff came out, I told you I want out of all my Kemba shares. I want out.
Eat that W, Sam. You did call that.
But I'm just saying, I'm reading the tea leaves. I'm not saying I don't like Kemba the player. I loved the signing at the beginning of last year, but you're putting everything together here. The maintenance, not getting him together. The thing that scared me the most was having a small knee issue, fine, during the season. Taking 4 months off and still having that knee issue after we were told that, oh, God, Kemba Walker's first soundbite to us, to the media, right after he was came back was, oh, that 4 months did me so great. Oh, I loved it. It was the best. It's just what my knee needed. And then a week later, it's okay. Kemba's experiencing soreness again. They're going to be managing
They've been
him.
so good at downplaying this, haven't they? Like every time.
And I was like, no. I've seen this movie before. This is how it goes. And downplay it. Oh, we're just worried about long term. And these are the things that you say when you're like, yeah, I don't freaking know.
And what did we say over the summer? We're like, we know how this goes with the Boston Celtics.
Right.
So this is something that's going to be with him for the next 3 seasons. And that's another hit. This isn't going to get any better. This goes back to knee surgeries he had in Charlotte. You have to question maybe the Hornets, when they had the chance to keep him, said, this knee's not right. Like, we know it better than the Celtics do. So just let him go. The Celtics were in a desperate situation where a free agent wanted to come, they do it.
What does it tell you? That though, Bobby, think of that. So the narrative the past few days has been, what's Charlotte doing? Why would they pay Gordon all this money at this age with his injury history and not have
That's a separate question.
What I'm saying is, why would they do this and not have paid Kemba the year before? Well, maybe you have your answer here is they didn't think that Kemba was worth 4 years worth of whatever it was that they were going to get off of that. It's telling that they would feel more comfortable 1 year later with 4 years of Gordon Hayward giving his injury history than Kemba Walker.
That you can't justify that signing yet. I still will not justify.
No, it's two separate things. It feels like Charlotte could be making the same mistake now that they could have made before. So it's not
whether they are or they aren't. Whether they are, they aren't. Again, at the end of the day, the telling things are the injury during that gap of time that where we rested during the quarantine situation, came back, had to manage, and the fact that again we're entering a management situation at the beginning of a year. Granted, it's a turnaround, but I don't know that 3-4 months off would change it a ton. It just feels like this is something that's going to have to be managed for the rest of his career, which means likely, some sort of arthritic or degenerative condition or something that's just going to linger and not go away. So again, you have good days, you have bad days, but it doesn't. These things don't get better. And that's really I'm not.
When you're a guy like Kemba, your style of play is, you're quick, you're fast, you're shifty, you're getting in and out of the lanes. You're these ridiculous shots. You use your knees. Not saying other positions don't, but he's the type of guy that needs to be feeling good because that's his worth to the team, right? It is his shiftiness, his quickness, his spin move, whatever it is. So if it's something that he's thinking about, or if it's something that he can only go 80%. Well, now you if you're going 80%, you're just another point guard in the NBA because that 20% is the difference between Kemba Walker and a lot of these guys.
And they need him now more than ever, Jimmy, to take It's like when you're one of 4, you can kind of, have nights where you can hide a little bit or not be your best. But now he's one of 3 who have to carry a tremendous offensive burden with really nothing behind them. So Kemba Walker just kind of drifting into the shadows and becoming not a role player, but not a dynamic superstar. Anything less than all-star level is way short of what you need out of Kemba Walker on this.
Bobby, maybe you don't know this off the top of your head, but was there a guard around the Celtics' first pick this year that if they were really worried about Kemba and thought, I know they went with Peyton Pritchard in the second, but in the first round, maybe if they were concerned long term, would they have considered,
Yeah, they were sandwiched between 2 point guards, Kira Lewis at 13 and Cole Anthony at 15. So on each side there, you had a chance to take a guy. I still like going with Naismith because of all the reasons we talked about.
I do too. I'm just saying, like, if they're concerned about not having Kemba for 30 games and not having him at the start of the year, maybe that tells you maybe they're not as concerned as we are. Maybe
this still calls into question where they see themselves, because we get news in the last few days that Ainge was willing to go as high as $100 million to keep Hayward. Now,
I want to get to that in a minute.
Now, who knows how truthful that was? Might just be talking after the fact. But if you're going forward with Kemba now, and we have the rumors there too, you were willing to go forward with Hayward here. Were you all in on this situation here? And if that's the case, why not last year when you had Kemba going at the all-star level? You had some concerns around that trade deadline at February when this started. Why didn't you load up, go all in last year like it looked like that year was going to be at that point in time? That's another
that's not
thing
how
that we
people
go
do
back
business. Nobody loads up for a year. You just don't do it. Nobody does that. It's not a real thing.
You know how people
Nobody loads up for a year.
Well, they didn't do anything.
The only way people were
well, I think it's come into clear focus here based on what you just said. I think the if we sleuth
last
it all
year looks
together,
so much more important now.
but if we sleuth it all together, Kemba being rumored in this Jrue Holiday situation, and the initial reaction from Jimmy and a bunch of other people was Jrue freaking Holiday. Like for Kemba, that's crazy. But like it seems to feel like they were trying to move off of Kemba, even if it was Jrue, or to have that salary in place to just get that off the books, and then either sign Hayward or trade Hayward. This is what we've kind of learned in this week or two. They might have been ready to go forth with Hayward and not Kemba.
They're stuck in between now,
and they ended up in the other situation where they're stuck with Kemba and they lost Hayward.
Well, they may have not been able. Maybe Kemba. I mean, maybe he doesn't pass. Is it the point where he wouldn't pass a physical in a trade?
Who knows, right?
That's a good question too.
Because if you're the Celtics and you're worried about Kemba, like it sounds like they might be, you're going to give away a little bit more to flip him for a Jrue Holiday.
Yeah, that's how it goes. You're giving away a little more to make the other team accept it, like that Isaiah situation. That deal almost didn't get done because of his health there. So they're stuck. They got to make this work. The only thing I'll say optimistically is that they had a good plan that largely worked last year. You talk about all the shiftiness, Jimmy. We saw that against Philadelphia. First half of that Toronto series, strong.
We did.
And then you get into the later stages of that one, and he broke down a little bit. Bounced back with some 20-pointers against Miami. So it's not like he's – I mean, they're not –
I think the numbers were deceptive. I think he was off most – I think he was Kemba light even at his best last year upon returning. I don't think we ever saw that guy who could take over a game as he did a few times during the year.
You never saw the November production.
You never saw, it wasn't just the production, it wasn't the get out of my effing way, getting to his spot and knocking down those shots when he'd get on those streaks and be like, wow, that's what you get Kemba for.
So maybe that guy's gone.
He wasn't moving like that.
It's way too soon to say that he's gone. I mean, I think I saw one. I think there was one game against Toronto where he looked like himself and he had like a really nice.
He had a couple good ones against Miami. I mean, it was hit or miss, and that's probably how it's going to be now.
Yeah, obviously, we all know he didn't look the way that we saw in the regular season, and we said that right now. And I think, John, what you said is you'd be more concerned about Kemba Walker if he wasn't hurt than if he was hurt. Does that ring a bell?
Yes. Well, we did.
It's in the tape library somewhere.
No, I mean, saying if that's who he is, this guy's not great right now. That's what I was saying when we were watching him last in the postseason. He just didn't. He just couldn't do what he was used to doing. So he has to be right. And look, when Jeff asked Brad about it, the soundbite that we played earlier in the pod, I didn't play the front of it, but what Jeff asked him outright was basically like, so I've watched him play I've watched Kemba play since college. He clearly wasn't right at the end of last year. And Brad
said too.
Huh?
That's what Danny said too.
And Brad did not at all dispel that. He was like, yeah, it's all about strengthening the thing. You're talking about stuff, that's like, really like we gotta do the best we can to keep this thing going. I mean, just some of the quotes here. And Bobby, you wrote the story, it's the bubble was unique, 4 months off, different changes, ramping up,
Yeah, so that's a good point too. He did put some important distinctions in there. If we go back to July, he basically showed up at Auerbach Center. They had no clue what was going on, it sounded like, and all of a sudden that knee just started flaring up. Yep. So who knows what he was doing during those 4 months? Who knows what kind of regimen he was on? It was clear him and Grant were working out together in Charlotte. So there was probably some work being done there, maybe more work than needed to be done.
Yeah.
The point is now he's going to be in Boston this weekend.
The key is strengthening the knee.
Yeah, they have a month to
Right.
work on that stuff.
Similar to what it was at the bubble. He shows up, he tries to do basketball, it hurts, like it's.
But guys, I mean, this is my point. Don't you think they manage it fairly well in the bubble? And now the conditions are even more ideal to manage it a little bit.
Yeah, but he's got to play 72 games plus playoffs here. And again, I know they're going to manage it, but you got to really you don't have the benefit of an off season to do a bunch of different things. Again, people with conditions like this, you do spend some time doing just weights away from basketball activities, strengthening the areas around the knee so it can withstand a little bit more, because you can't do that kind of stuff during the season. There's too many rigors, and now it's going to be an accelerated timetable to get this thing up and running. I mean, you may be looking at no back-to-backs, and possibly up to what? 20 to 25 out of the 72 games off for him. We're just
speculating. Do they have the
here,
personnel to overcome that?
That's a lot, because you do not have personnel to overcome it, at all, as you said.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what makes me question like some of the maybe like their free agent targets or like their draft. I mean, you can't tell me that if Kemba's going to miss a third of the season that they couldn't have used another guard more than.
We don't know.
Here's what we'll ultimately. This is, I mean, we go back to this every single time. Jason Tatum's going to have to do a ton, like a ginormous load is going to have to be undertaken by him, and it feels like he's ready for it. But
this is what we talked about. The stuff you wanted to, you mentioned it earlier, Bobby. It means Tatum has the ball in his hands more. And again, there's things, if you fill the floor with shooters, I like that. That's not a bad thing necessarily. But if we just have ISO ball, Tatum needs to score 45 to save them every night, that's going to be a mess. That's not going to be a great situation.
It's going to be so frustrating. You know what, John, you mentioned earlier is that it might be Marcus Smart who starts to do a little too much, or starts to think he needs to do a little too much.
You want to see this locker room get torn apart when Marcus starts taking 22 shots a game.
We are concerned about that.
That's 15 shots. That's like roughly 15 shots from Kemba, 10 to 15 shots now. They're going to go elsewhere. Jason Tatum on a good night is already taking that number. I mean, how many shots is he going to end up taking? So, I mean, the ball will get spread around.
Well, the point there is he's not pulling from guys. Say Kemba's out, Hayward's gone. You just got these young guys. He's not necessarily pulling from anyone. Now, unless Aaron Naismith comes out here and starts lighting the earth on fire next month, he's not pulling from anyone. And his production was good enough last year. I saw today, he was one of the 10 best spot-up shooters in the NBA last year. Marcus Smart, that is.
On catch and shoot threes.
Yeah, so it's not.
He was actually top 5 almost all year long in catch and shoot threes.
Yeah, I mean, so like the issue in the bubble where you had the chairs flying, everything else, it felt like guys were pulling from each other. Now it's a little more consolidated where you just got to get shots for Smart, Brown, Tatum. Like this almost works out a lot of the issues we talked about. It's just, do these guys have the capabilities to get it done? Tatum is the ball handler, Brown freeing himself, and Smart, continuing that production next year.
Right. Let me. Go ahead, Jimmy. And
real quick, people say Pritchard's ready to play. I mean, that may have went into their pick. I mean, some people thought they may have reached a little bit on that, but I mean, we saw what happened. They gave away their last first round pick. So
Jeff Teague too. Like what?
Teague, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those.
We didn't we debate last week Wanamaker and Teague. All of a sudden, I'm not fronting Wanamaker anymore. Jeff Teague's the guy you want there if Kemba's in this spot.
Right. You're looking at a guy who's like going to try to do Kemba things. It's more of a Teague role, like that's what he does.
Right.
He likes
that could help a lot. Like that move has a completely different connotation now that Kemba's out.
Like if Teague is starting for you on nights where Kemba isn't going, nobody's chalking up a loss. I mean, it just means, like you said, Bobby, that guys are going to take on a little bit bigger of a roles. We haven't even mentioned Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's the guy that everyone saw take a little bit of a leap in the bubble, but then in the playoffs, it felt like he was almost just watching a little bit too much. So maybe he's a guy that, steps up here a little bit. I know he's not like a ball handler like Kemba or anything like that, but he could take some of those shots. He can, add on to his game a little bit, and you just it's all on deck. It's unfortunate that you don't want to have to play your young guys. And I imagine they're going to try to limit their minutes too, because they're not trying to tire everybody out in games 1 through 20. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they need to space out the season.
if we're just talking about the players on the court here, like throw aside all the books, all the asset management, all that stuff, you sort of do end up in a spot here that we talked about, like making this all about Tatum and Brown. You clear a lot of the other guys out of the way, and not necessarily Smart here, but Smart gives you value on the other end, and it's all about those two at this point. Now the problem is you have a damaged asset in Kemba. You got nothing for Hayward yet as of now. You probably look to that trade too and see what's going to come back for that. There's a lot of management things that we can still rip Danny for. But in terms of what's there on the court next year, if we're just thinking about that, they can work with this.
Well, let's rip Danny a little bit. But
All right.
first
Bob,
off,
you got your Mount Waters though too. Don't forget.
I know the two-way. Anyway, so let's quickly tell people about the sponsor, Manscaped. Biggest grooming. Our friends at Manscaped are here to remind you to take care of your biggest grooming and hygiene needs from head to toe with the all-in-one Manscaped Performance Package Kit. What do you get out of this? Lawnmower 3.0. That's good stuff right there
That's key
for the close shave down there. Weed whacker, ear and nose hair trimmer. Also the crop preserver, which is deodorant for down below. You've got foot powder, which is a foot duster. You have Manscaped cologne. You have a carry-on bag, boxer briefs that keep your junk together. And you get all of that. And you get 20% off. That's the best part. 20% off and free shipping with the code GARDEN20 at manscaped.com. Once again, 20% off and free shipping with the code GARDEN20 at manscaped.com. So let's get into it briefly, guys. Okay. The Gordon Hayward situation, I did want to address this before we wrap it up. Jimmy's got dates. He's got ladies. He's got to get going.
COVID's rearing its ugly head. I haven't been on a date in ages.
Well, you're being responsible, Jimmy, and we thank you for it.
But if you're a girl watching, I mean, slide in. I mean, it's all good. But anyways,
it's not what we do here.
There might be a couple. Who knows?
So here's what we got. The reports, and again, this stuff's going to come out, and it's really hard to just, people are going to jump on stuff because it's going to kind of suit their narrative, and it's what people do all the time. So I'm going to avoid doing that. However, the reason I'm more inclined to believe that this might be true is because it actually hurts Danny's case to find out, that if this would be true, that they were about to offer $100 million and the Pacers were too. So, So the reports are Celtics and Pacers each were offering, the numbers have been thrown around north of 100 and up to 110, which is way higher than we thought and not too far off from the 120 he got from Charlotte. And so when you piece it all together again, we're trying to kind of sleuth this together too. You're looking at what? Gordon didn't want to come here. The Celtics offer was what it was. Told him he didn't want to be here. They worked out an extension seemingly to get the Indiana trade done. Feels like Danny kind of held his cards a little bit too long, and Charlotte swooped in. It's possible Gordon always was going to wait and see, but the reason I don't believe it is that 2-day extension never would have been granted. If Gordon wanted to see the market first, he could have just left on Tuesday, opted out. That extension existed simply to complete this deal, to send Gordon away from Boston, which he clearly didn't want if the money was the same, to Indiana for the money that was roughly the same at what Boston was offering. And it appears that the reason behind not doing this is Danny didn't like Miles Turner. So we're back to the is something better than nothing debate here, which we had before. And again, I was firmly in and all of us were, I think, something is better than nothing. Take it, learn to enjoy Miles Turner and move on. And if this is what it came, and again, you're hearing different people say different things. Kevin O'Connor on his podcast was trying to give Danny the benefit of the doubt. He's a bit of I'm not going to call him a homer, but he's sympathetic to the Celtics situation here. He doesn't want to heap on him, but he's saying this just sounds like Danny botched it. I don't know how we're going to walk away from this thinking anything but that. Maybe we do, but I don't know.
This is where Danny clearly fell short, is he didn't get that.
It's a mismanaged situation, it sounds like, and one that, again, I believe that, if this happened to another organization, if we watched a rival organization right now mess something up like this, lose star players year over year, lose assets, get nothing in return, we would be burying them. burying them.
Yeah, my take's still the February one. You go back to February and say, do you offload him then, anticipating what could be coming later in terms of a deal, in terms of what you might have to pay for him.
But
they're in a different place.
you would have been the first guy with the pitchforks if Danny has traded Gordon Hayward at the trade deadline.
Well, now
I
just
mean,
looking at, I'm using some revisionist history there, some retrospective to, anticipate what ultimately happened, and say if you're in that position and have an idea that might happen, that might be the best way to asset manage. Then because
you could say that with Kyrie too.
You're in a better position. Oh, well, I always thought about it with Kyrie. Like, if you really think you're going to lose him at the end of the year, there's a strong case here to move him. Because once you get to that place...
I was all in on Kyrie moving.
That made more sense because you knew Kyrie hated it here.
You're in a position of strength when
I
you're
would have
giving a guy
taken
up for half
anything for Kyrie there. Anything. Jimmy, we had this conversation a million times.
The thing is, though, in those spots, you say, oh, maybe they could win. Maybe they can do it. And that's where the Celtics ultimately went with that. Now, right now, I'm firmly in Danny's camp on this. And, you can roll the tape to last week. What were me and Jimmy talking about when we were discussing the Indiana package here? Turner's just, what do people imagine when they think of Turner? Like, I put up pictures of Anthony Davis and just these guys because I don't know what people were watching all these years, not to mention when he played with Kemba, Tatum, Brown, and Smart on the Team USA team.
Nobody likes Turner, Bobby.
Yeah.
Not people don't love Turner. We were trying to talk ourselves into it because the argument was simply...
you know what we didn't know?
that
Tristan Thompson was coming around the corner. And I asked you guys in the group chat, would you rather...
This is what drives me nuts. The Celtics had a plan A and mucked it. Let's not pretend that plan B or C was in fact plan A and possibly even better than plan A. It wasn't. This is not what Danny wanted to do.
Well, let's go back to that one-to-one. Let's say the package was Doug McDermott, who just kind of stinks. Like, he's a mediocre wing player, and Turner, a fairly mediocre center here. For Tristan Thompson, and this is where we disagree, John. We have two different visions of what Tristan Thompson could be for this team. I think he's a game changer. Jimmy's close in my camp here. But, he
was always an option. Bobby, I'm not saying that. I don't disagree that you could trip into this working again, okay? But it wasn't the plan. It's not plan A. They were not prepared to let Gordon walk because I'll cobble it together. They did not want to lose the asset for nothing. That is what happened. And now you're saying, shoulder shrug. We never know. It could work out, but it wasn't the plan. So there's no reason to defend it. It was mismanaged.
You get a question is at what point they figured out that they could go to a Thompson, because don't you think the option was there to eat Nicholas Batum? The option's still there to do something with Charlotte. People are talking about Terry Rozier. I don't think that's possible at this point, but they chose to just let Hayward walk in that situation instead of...
They chose nothing. It was chosen for them.
There was always a chance. Charlotte needed $10 million in relief to do this. Do you think they wanted to just cut Batum and eat $10 million a year there? Like, they could have worked something.
Someone's asking here, is Kemba injured? The answer is yes. That's why we started this stream. A few people jumping in late. We are catching you up. Kemba Walker, not injured, but it's a knee.
Is he hurt or injured? Is he hurt?
We had an update on it. We'll circle back to that later because people are asking. But yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
All right, break the tie here, Jimmy. I mean, where do you see this now? If the Celtics, along the way in these negotiations...
If Jimmy breaks the tie on your side, I'll just bring in more people, Bobby.
If we look back on the situation,
I'm not afraid to go 1-on-5 either. I don't care.
If we look back on the situation and say Danny and Indiana are talking for days and days and days, all of a sudden LA, those two LA teams that possibly could have taken Thompson went in different directions, and the Celtics find out they're the top suitors now for Tristan Thompson if they walk away from this. I think that's a realistic possibility and a good move.
So
I don't even know what we're trying to say anymore.
Plan A's and plan B.
Yeah, it was either or, John. You couldn't.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I just don't think that this is no different than saying Cantor and Kemba was better than Horford and Kyrie.
Oh, you are understating Tristan Thompson so much, and that's where I want to.
All I'm saying is there's no
John's
reason,
point is this.
There's no reason to pretend the thing that you're doing because this is where you are right now, which still might be good, was what you intended to do. It was
well,
not.
what did you want them to do?
It's not what I wanted. This is where we're stuck on on this argument. It is not what I wanted. It is clearly what they wanted, which was not to have this happen. And
Well, this is what Zach Lowe said too on his podcast in terms of the assets that we're talking about here, because they still have assets when you think about a Thompson for 2 years, when you think about the trade exception that could be coming back, which we also debated about the other day. They canvassed the league apparently on Miles Turner's value as a secondary trade target for 3 years, $18 million a year, and teams didn't want him. No one around the league. The Pacers are begging teams right now to take
I
Miles
know.
Turner, and no one wants him.
Yeah.
So what are you talking? Doug McDermott, useless as an asset. Miles Turner, next to useless as an asset. So are you really salvaging much there by getting those two guys?
Well, I'll ask you this. Can you drag his corpse along with you until his contract is up and then dump the expiring just to have the asset? Again, it's what it comes down to. It's whether or not you want to not have the salary on the books and completely let the asset walk. At this point, you're in mid-level exception land, and that's where they are. And they got Tristan Thompson, and it's a Band-Aid, and it's the best that they could do given the circumstances.
All right, Jimmy, jump in on that one.
Well, no. So here's, I mean, I'm gonna say a few things. One, clearly, it looks like it was not Plan A to have this situation for the Celtics. Last year, Plan A didn't happen either. It was Plan B.
But it worked.
When Al Horford walked, when Kyrie Irving walked, they ended up with Kemba Walker, and now here we are with Kemba Walker. They luckily were able to get Kemba Walker in the sign and trade with Charlotte. So they made the most out of a pretty shitty situation there, and Danny Ainge has actually done that a good amount over the last 10 years. A Plan B has kind of worked out, whether it's getting Isaiah Thomas and catching lightning in a bottle there, and he's when you look at some of the mistakes they've made in the NBA draft, he's been able to sort of keep them competitive by making some big, Marcus Morris. And the other thing I want to say is this: we're writing off this Pacers trade right now. Why am I blanking on his name? We were just talking about him.
Miles Turner.
Thank you, Miles Turner. Isn't Brad Stevens a guy who's been able to acquire some guys at lower value and make them into better players?
Right, he's 24.
Exactly. Why is the entire league giving up?
That's what I mean. Is like I would rather bring in players like that for Brad.
Right. I mean, what is Brad's use if it's not to take some of these young guys, put them into a good culture, get them under his wing.
Right. He's better at that than coaching stars.
Show them what they're good at or better at, and get them away from what they're not doing well. Get them with the whole Celtics franchise. Get him out of Indy, and maybe you culture change is good for a guy. Is that just out the window? Oh, the rest of the league doesn't want to trade for him, so the Celtics didn't want him. I don't know if it's that easy. Like John said, you bring a guy in, he can add. He's better than nothing. So maybe he's not your ideal.
It's not nothing though.
Player.
And again,
his roster spot is better than what.
So even if you don't,
you could make the case he's more valuable than Thomas. And like John said, he turns into an expiring contract the last year of his deal. Worst case scenario, he does still fill a need. Again, I haven't watched every single game of Miles Turner, but I know what he does. I know what he does okay, and I think that there's room for growth there. So you can't just tell me, Celtics weren't interested. They didn't want to do the deal.
Yeah, my point is,
hold on, real quick. More to the Plan A factor. Take Turner out of it. The fact that the Celtics seem to be willing to go well past a point that any of us thought that they would go on a contract with Hayward means that they looked at their roster and they said, "We need this," and couldn't get it done. And so that's twofold. Is one, for whatever reason, the 110 or wherever they were willing to go, which we would have considered to be a massive overpay for Hayward, and it was well within range of what he ended up getting, something they desperately wanted to do, couldn't make it happen. And then they were in a shit or get off the pot situation.
I'll give you guys
do the Pacers trade you don't love, or he walks. And again, it just comes back to this. We are debating whether or not we like Miles Turner instead of debating whether or not we like having something rather than nothing in the Hayward situation.
I still argue Thompson something, but I'll give you
That's the thing. Yeah, Bobby's saying it's not something for nothing. It's either Turner or Thompson.
I think you always knew a player like Thompson was possible because when we talked about early in the offseason, worst case scenarios for Hayward, he walks and you get the mid-level. And we looked through a bunch of guys and we said, I guess this guy,
Well,
this
is my
we
point.
mentioned Thompson. In every scenario, we viewed that as a consolation prize. I don't know why we're now looking at it as if it was equal to or better than.
There's two different mid-levels. If you're a taxpayer, you can offer $5 million. If you're a non-taxpayer, you can offer $10 million. And that $10 million is why you get Thompson. He wouldn't have taken $10 million for 2 years. They gave him $20 million for 2 years because you didn't get those players back. That's my point. It was either or in that situation. You can either take the money back from Indiana, still be a taxpayer team, and get maybe, I don't know,
Right, but is
Aaron
that
Baines.
really what the Celtics wanted to do? Is what
It could have been. I mean, that's why you possibly could have walked away from the table. I'll give you guys this, though. Could you have made a bigger deal with Indiana? And we talked about this last week. Put in Romeo Langford, put in some other guys, and try to get TJ
That's what we
Warren
thought
back.
you had to do.
I think that's a good question now.
I'm
You don't have
fairly
wing depth.
certain the Celtics would have done that, throwing in Romeo Langford and getting TJ Warren.
Yeah. So if you could get there and they chose not to, I think that's a fair criticism. If you couldn't get to Warren, and again, I don't like Oladipo that much either, but if you couldn't get to Oladipo either and you wanted him, like, just it's Turner and McDermott, and you have the chance to sign Thompson instead. I walk away from that too if I'm in that spot. Again, when we talked about Thompson earlier this offseason, I didn't think they could actually get him. I thought the Lakers would scoop him up. I thought the Clippers would. Like, I thought he would be westbound easily. I'm still shocked they could get him, and maybe it was just about the money.
That actually concerns me, but anyway, the fact that they could get him makes you wonder whether other people know something we don't. But I think Thompson will be fine. I think he's going to be far short of a game changer. I think he's going to be okay. I don't think it's better than. I think Plan A was actually Hayward on an overpay. Versus if you look at your scenario, junk coming from Indiana. Overpay for Hayward where they are now.
Would we have liked that?
I would have ranked them Hayward 1, overpay for Indiana 2, where they are now 3. That's me.
So your number one would have been keeping him at 100.
I want 100. If you could have convinced Hayward to do 4 and 100, I would have done that. I think I
would have done that too.
I think that was option 1. The problem was Hayward clearly didn't want it. Said, but I'll do Indiana and take a hometown discount there, and then Danny stuck. Indiana thought they had leverage because Hayward clearly didn't want to play for Boston. Danny thought he had it because he thought there was no market out there with Indiana, with Miami and New York. Charlotte effed up the whole game. I don't know what I don't know is our doppelgangers in Indiana right now, are they yelling at each other like, we could have friggin' had Hayward and we blew it? I don't know. I don't know that Indiana
we don't know what the Pacers
were.
Now the report comes out they're offering 100, but what about like in a sign and trade situation?
The Pacers people I saw out there really wanted him, and they were ready to dump Turner for reasons I've mentioned, and they're probably pretty bummed this didn't come together.
I don't know what would have gotten it done then. If Oladipo was a concern and that was never going to be a straight up swap, you take him in a contract year. I don't know how that deal gets done otherwise.
I think you'd have to take it bigger. If you wanted Oladipo, suddenly Smart and Kemba get involved. If you want to do Warren,
no, that's way too much.
You're sending prospects. Well, because of the money there.
Yeah.
If you want to do Warren and Turner, you're sending a Langford, you're sending a Rob Williams, which I don't think any of us would have had huge problems with.
No.
But again, how much do you love TJ Warren?
You could have those guys and their children,
There's mixed reviews
their
on
firstborn
TJ Warren.
children.
I like him.
Yes.
I would have done that potential deal just because you need wing depth. We're back with Semi Ojeleye now. So you would have addressed center and the wing in that trade. I would not have done Oladipo.
I just want to say that our chat has devolved into 1 or 2 Raptors fans really agitating a bunch of Celtics fans. The Raptors fans are here for you, Bobby, and there's a little bit of a border.
Signing Aaron Baines up in Toronto.
There's a little bit of a border war going on here.
Celtics fans and Raptors fans are going to have to get along down in those comments.
At some point or another.
Raptors fans are here to stay, which I'm fine with. And we'll get into the Tampa Bay Raptors.
Right now, the Celtics... right now the Celtics are the Raptors. People just leave us,
Right.
They just leave.
I don't know.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it because, again, we're going to go in circles here. But, again, just a recap. At the start of the show, we did tell you guys about Kemba Walker. This is not a new injury. Some people in the chat were asking. It's the same knee injury that forced him, to be kind of a little maintenance situation when he was in the bubble, that flared up during the season a couple of times, and then again when he started resuming basketball activities before action in the bubble started. Required a little bit of maintenance. He was slow to get started. Brad Stevens was on a podcast today on the CLNS Media Network with Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman, and gave a little insight saying, not so sure Kemba's going to be ready. So that's one of the reasons we came out to talk about this developing situation. Definitely check out that interview either on our YouTube channel, which you're on right now. Many of you can see the whole video interview there. Subscribe as well, because you will get access to these live chats. When we do go live, you will get a notification. Check out that podcast as well, Ryan and Goodman podcast. They get great guests, super interesting conversation, basketball, college, and pro. Two of the best in the business, two of the best who've ever. But Bob Ryan, needs no introduction, and obviously Jeff knows everybody, super well connected here at all levels of basketball. So definitely check that out. And then the second thing was contract details came out. Celtics and Pacers offering Gordon Hayward a little bit over $100 million over 4 years. And the question, did the Celtics do everything they could do to maximize this situation? And the debate rages on. So I'll give you guys closing thoughts here before we go. And we thank our sponsor one last time.
Celtics fans, you are going to love Tristan Thompson, and John Zanis will be a believer by the end of the year as well.
I like Tristan Thompson. I don't
You're
love
going
Tristan
to love him.
Okay.
You guys
Jimmy?
know my thoughts on Thompson. Huge fan, big fan of the Kardashians too. So happy to welcome them to Boston. My closing thought is I am officially full-time Kemba watch now moving forward. I think Gordon Hayward talk. See you later. We barely knew you.
We'll see
you around. I'm concerned about the players that are on this team moving forward. So I'm turning my attention to Kemba Walker. And I want to see how his knee responds to, being back on the court. And I'm hoping that having a regular, sort of rehab or whatever you want to call it, routine in Boston, in a great facility with great team doctors and the likes in Boston, that maybe it's not as bad as it sounded.
What I'm going to delude myself into believing is that this is going to be a dynamite draft class. So I'm putting all my eggs in the Naismith Pritchard basket to make contributions this year beyond what we've seen any rookies make in the last couple of years. That's one. Number two, the thing I'm concerned with is Kardashian influence on Jason Tatum. That freaking terrifies me.
Here's my question, guys.
That legitimately terrifies me. Mr. Soft-spoken. Mr. Soft-spoken lived with his mom up until last year. LA boy all of a sudden is like, whoa, I've got all this money and this is cool. I'm worried.
He couldn't get the hoop last year.
I'm worried about Tatum. I'm worried a little bit.
Yeah, he's got that NBA money now.
Yeah.
Guys, who you starting when Kemba's out? You got Smart at the wings, a center, Naismith, Grant, or Teague.
Did you really say Grant, like with a straight face?
Grant could be the 4 with that group.
All right, we're gonna let Bobby go here.
Yeah, we'll talk about that some other day.
All right.
No, anyway, thanks again for joining. This was a semi-emergency pod, but we wanted to sneak one in before the holiday. Bobby has to make all Thanksgiving dinner this year.
Cooking starts tonight, so I also got a lot of wine to get me through it. But you know what? I enjoy it. I'm gonna do it with a smile.
I got a lot of prep work tonight too. I got to make a bunch of pies tomorrow.
What kind?
Everybody likes pie.
One pumpkin, one blueberry. But we've got to make a few side dishes as well. So we've got the bird is being handled elsewhere, but we've got some work to do tomorrow. So this is the last night we can do this. Thank you everybody for joining. Happy Thanksgiving. What's up, Bobby?
No, that's it. That's it from me.
Oh, sorry.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you guys on the other side, maybe this weekend. If there's any news developing, trade exception, who knows? Maybe Bogdan somehow ends up here. I doubt it.
Drink, said Bogdan.
Later, guys.
Peace.